Hi guys, this is Weekly from Weekly Disaster Games here, and well, I'm going to be trying to answer to the best of my abilities what makes Final Fantasy VII such a big deal. Now I imagine many of you guys may be thinking, oh, why do I keep on hearing about this game? Or how come throughout my entire gaming career this game always rears its head? What's so special about Cloud? Why does he look like Popeye? Why do people care about this 22-year-old game? Why do people want it remade so badly? These are probably thoughts that have entered quite a few people's heads, and well, I'm not any authority on the subject, but I can safely say I've been playing Final Fantasy for quite a while, and well, I think I can properly answer this. But, in order to do that, you're going to have to indulge me, and we're going to have to go back in time a little bit. So why don't we do that? So let's go back to 1997, January, and let's find ourselves in Japan. Ooh, very nice. This is the month when Final Fantasy VII released, and within 3 days of its initial release, it sold 2 million copies. Now, let me say that one more time for you guys, just so you get it. Within 3 days of its release, the game sold over 2 million copies. In Japan, one country, on its own, in 1997. Yeah, this is a big deal. The gaming industry, it has always been a decently sized industry, but the industry was nowhere near as big then as it is now. And the fact that it sold over 2 million copies in a single country within 3 days? This is unprecedented. Now, Final Fantasy did see quite a bit of success in Japan. Obviously, it started there, they got 6 other titles beforehand, it was a known brand. But the fact of the matter is, Final Fantasy VII selling that much that fast, it was crazy, it was out of this world, and there are many reasons for that. But before we jump right into that, let's take a look at the West. So let's travel a little bit in the future, to September of 1997. Here we are in North America. Now, the game didn't sell quite as fast here, but within 2 months, Sony announced that Final Fantasy VII sold over 1 million in North America alone. Now, North America, you know, it's a bigger country, and yeah, there's a lot of gaming stuff here, but keep in mind, this is 1997. The world isn't nearly as linked as compared to now. Back then, games were kind of weird. You weren't really supposed to play games. I mean, sure, there were a couple people that were like, yeah, dude, rad. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people look down on you for doing it. And if you played Japanese stuff, I mean, I'm sure there were some cults out there that liked it, but you're not going to do super well. But Final Fantasy VII, this was a big deal. It sold 1 million copies. It's one of the biggest games that made Sony a success in America. It's one of the reasons why we have the PS4 now, because if Sony wasn't successful then, well, I mean, I'm sure you can imagine what would happen if their first console didn't sell too well. The fact of the matter is, Final Fantasy VII was a killer app for the PS1, and it sold fantastically in both its home country of origin, as well as overseas. And well, in order to understand that, we have to take a look at what was happening at the time. So let's take a look at the game preceding Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VI. Now, many people to this day remark Final Fantasy VI as probably the better game. Now, personally, everyone has their own opinion. I actually like Final Fantasy VII quite a bit, so I don't know if I could personally say 6 is better, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of people think Final Fantasy VI is one of the best games, and you know what? I can't deny that it is, because it is one of the best games. And well, let's take a look at it. Well, graphically speaking, it's very pretty. It's very good pixel art. It reminds me of a good old indie. But wait a second, we're not in 2019. We're in 1997. This style of graphics here, this was the norm. You can't just like it for being a niche, because back then that was the standard. Imagine if I said, I really like 3D graphics in 2019. Imagine the looks you'd get from people. Almost all games are made with 3D graphics. Like, what are you saying? It would be the same thing if someone said, I really like pixel art. Well, that's great. That's what most games are these days, dude. See, in 1997, pixel art was the standard. It wasn't a niche, it wasn't an indie thing, it was how most games were made. But Final Fantasy VII was the first game in Final Fantasy, obviously, to break the mold, but it was also one of the first big AAA games of the time to really dive head deep into 3D. That's one of the reasons why Mr. Cloud here kind of looks like a Popeye the Sailor Man. It's not because they wanted to make him look like that, it's because this was one of the first times they were interacting with 3D technology for a video game. Now, of course, thank God, he looks a little bit better in combat. And of course, those beautiful FMVs, well, they were a sight to see if you were in 1997, I'll say that much. Ooh, look at her. The fact of the matter is, Final Fantasy VII looked completely different than what most gamers were used to, and was on a completely different system, and was using CDs. This was completely different than a cartridge. And I mean, look at the ads here. This was a completely different time. Can you imagine Sony saying this about Microsoft? I can't see it happening. Like, don't get me wrong, ads these days can get, they can get pretty advanced and pretty aggressive, but the time was just completely different back then in the 90s. And the fact of the matter is, Final Fantasy VII was a game that was hyped to before its launch, and it truly met that hype. Because yes, it brought in really decent 3D graphics for the time, especially in combat and of course with its full motion video cutscenes. But it also did one other thing. It was a fantastic game too. Now let's take a look at the creator of this game, Sakaguchi. Now this guy, known as the Gooch within the Final Fantasy community, is a legend. He was responsible for the first Final Fantasy, and well, he made quite a few of them up to number 9. Now the fact of the matter is, you have to keep in mind though, is that number 9, that one was his last. That was his real last Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII was only 2 games before 9. I mean, it was 7. It was 7, 8, 9. You see what I'm saying here? 7 was one of his last Final Fantasies this guy's ever made. And not only that, but it was one of the first ones to be on 3D technology. It was one of the first ones to leverage the power of the PS1 with a more powerful sound chip, with obviously the CDs to hold more game on. The fact of the matter is, this guy had made Final Fantasy games for 6 entries prior, and was able to bring all that he learned, along with all the pros that he acquired for his team, and they were able to make something truly great. You know, it wasn't just a 3D skin, it was more than that. They put out, frankly, a masterpiece. And you can't deny the sales here. The sales were gangbusters. This game sold 3 million within its first year worldwide, at the very least. That's insane. Games just didn't quite sell like that back in the day. And Final Fantasy VII was actually one of the reasons why game publishers decided 3D might have been the way to go. You have to keep in mind, back then, people don't like change. I mean, why should we invest so much into 3D technology when the good old sprite game is going to sell us? Well, Final Fantasy VII proved that you can make a 3D game and it's going to sell gangbusters if it's good. And that's what happened. So now let's fast forward, let's just say 5 years. Okay, so what's so significant about 5 years later? Well, you know, this is a time where a little lowly game called Kingdom Hearts 1 released. Ooh, look at that. That looks a lot better than Popeye, doesn't it? The graphics, still, they were not as sharp as they are now, but do you recognize him? He doesn't look like Popeye, but he certainly looks like Cloud. He's got the gold hair. Look at that. See, what I'm trying to demonstrate with this is we got, in just 5 years' time, Cloud looking from this to that. Let's be fair. Let's compare full motion video Cloud compared to Kingdom Hearts 1 Cloud. I gotta admit, he's a little edgy, he's a little emo in Kingdom Hearts 1, but you have to admit, Cloud never looked this good in Final Fantasy VII. And oh my god, look at how he attacks, oh that's dangerous. I'm sure there are speedrunners that make a joke out of him in the actual game itself. But the fact of the matter is, this is Cloud, and he's voice acted! Whoa! Voice actor's pretty cool. Unfortunately, he's not the same one on the new game, but that's a tangent for a whole other thing. I actually do like the new voice actor in Final Fantasy VII Remake. But the point is, this is a whole other Cloud that we've never seen before. I mean, graphically, he looks better than Popeye. He speaks, he can attack, he's got some animations going on. And in just 5 years, people saw this turn into that. And you have to keep in mind that a lot of people saw this. Remember, the game sold well over 3 million copies within its first year. This was a known thing. This was popular. People knew what Final Fantasy was. And just 5 years later, you get to see Cloud done like this, among all the other characters that appeared in Kingdom Hearts. It was a pretty crazy thing. So, what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that Final Fantasy VII was so legendary that it appeared again. And when it appeared again, the graphics looked so much better. They were talking. They were animating. And I believe that this here is one of the first things that really planted the seed in people's mind. You know, maybe Final Fantasy VII could look a little bit better. So let's fast forward, you know, a little bit later in the timeline to 2006. This is the year when Advent Children came out. Now, is the movie bad?
Don't cry, Yazu.
But Mother's with him.
Maybe not.
Don't cry, Lost.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Does the movie look cool though? Yo, my lord, yeah, it looks really cool, man. Let's watch it, you know? Get some popcorn, let's watch some cool anime fights, man. See, the fact of the matter is, Advent Children may not have been a well-received movie, and its plot and story may have been very weird, and realistically, it's not a good sequel to Final Fantasy VII at all. But you gotta admit, this fight here at the end, it was worth it. See, the fact of the matter is we also got a brand new movie showcasing Cloud and friends in an entirely new graphic style that was much more photorealistic, and of course, it had the power to back it up. I mean, let's be real here. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children may not have been a fantastic film, but to this day, I still think it holds up a little bit. And, well, a lot of people loved it. Or at least a lot of AMVers, if you know what I mean. People made music videos of everything. In fact, my first experience with Final Fantasy was actually seeing just clips of this movie with some random rock stuff thrown onto it. The fact of the matter is, Final Fantasy, yet again, won another piece of the public eye with this movie. And you have to admit, guys, it does look pretty cool. So now let's fast forward just a little bit to this. Now, what are we looking at here? Okay. Looks like we're working with the PS3 tech demo that Square Enix made. You see, this is something that Square Enix decided to make for an E3 at the time, for the PS3, showcasing what they can use with their new technology at the time. And out of all the games they had to pick Final Fantasy VII and the infamous train intro scene. Imagine what people were thinking at this time. Square, oh my god, you made a demo of what it would be like if we just started playing Final Fantasy VII. You have to keep in mind, Cloud and his friends, they stuck around over the timeline. They've been in Kingdom Hearts, they've been in bad movies, and now they're here in a tech demo. People were over the moon, and I believe that this key moment here is the powder keg that truly set it off. This is what set off the idea, Final Fantasy VII, it can be remade. Because let's be real here, at this point 3D graphics had advanced quite far past that of Final Fantasy VII, and I don't want to be mean to the game, but realistically, it didn't age super well. I mean, don't get me wrong, the backgrounds, they're beautiful, but Popeye Cloud ain't so nice. He just isn't that good, not that good looking. I like FMV Cloud a little bit better personally, but we don't get him too much. So the fact of the matter is, we got this wonderful tech demo showing the new graphics that Square Enix can showcase, and it had to be Final Fantasy VII themed. And any fans that liked Final Fantasy VII, whether they got on the train later on or whether they stuck with the train when it first came out, the fact of the matter is, they were over the moon. And this is when they decided they wanted it. And now, let's fast forward a little bit later, to 2008. Now, 2008 is when we got the game Crisis Core. It's a very good prequel to Final Fantasy VII. Graphically, it looks a lot better than Popeye, and it released on the PSP, you know, a pretty good system back in the day. In fact, this is actually the place where I first met Final Fantasy VII. My first Final Fantasy VII experience, and actually my first Final Fantasy experience in general, was on the PSP with Crisis Core. You know, I got a new PSP for my 12th or 13th birthday, and I was like, man, that game looks really cool. And I pointed at it in GameStop. My mom was like, it's rated T, it's fine, he can have it. And that's how I got introduced. And oh my lord, this game is a whole other thing. And it's actually a legitimately good game. But along with this, Final Fantasy VII got a slew of other games. It got a mobile game that you can't play unless you were in Japan. It got bad game that we don't really want to talk about. Yeah, no one wants to talk about the PS2 game, Dirge of Cerberus. That's bad. Like, you thought Advent Children was bad? That one's bad. You don't even want to play it. It doesn't even look that cool. But we did get Crisis Core, a fantastic prequel to Final Fantasy VII. And well, hey, there's Cloud again. Still doesn't look like Popeye. I'm sorry that I'm going on that joke a little bit too much, but the fact remains that Cloud looked really good. And of course, all the other characters in Crisis Core also looked good. And this again proved to the audience that like Final Fantasy VII that they want a game. And I imagine there were so many people, including myself, at this time that were like, hey, We want Final Fantasy VII. We want it to look like this. We want a Crisis Core version. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get that, but it didn't take me too long after playing Crisis Core to be like, you know what? I gotta get on the good sauce. And whoa, look at that. It's on the PSP. You can get a ported version of Final Fantasy VII. And that brings me to my next point. By this time, around 2006 actually, Final Fantasy VII had already sold 10 million copies worldwide. Yeah, that's a far cry from 3 million its first year. 10 million copies is a pretty big number. Now, I know Call of Duty routinely hits that stuff, but again, factor in the timeline. A 1997 game looking like this managed to sell 10 million copies across platforms of PC and PS1, and as well as ported platforms? It's no wonder this game was a success, and I think Square Enix was doing this on purpose. They were always putting Final Fantasy VII stuff, out there just to sell their ports and stuff, and I think they've always internally had the plan to remake it. Now, they may have stated later on that they would never want to remake Final Fantasy VII until they made a game just as successful, but let's be real here, this was a plan that they have been sitting on. There's no reason why they'd keep a brand alive as this. And now they've kept the brand for so long that it's become a life of its own. Final Fantasy has pervaded the culture, it's in everything. Everyone knows the Buster Sword, everyone hears about it. I was not even born when it originally came in Japan. I was only 3 months old when it came out in September in America. Yet I played Final Fantasy VII when I was 12 or 13. Like, the fact of the matter is, if you were a gamer, especially in the 2000s time, there was no way you could escape this. Whether you got on the train from Kingdom Hearts, or whether you got on the train from getting a PSP and seeing a cool cover at GameStop like I did, the fact of the matter is, you could not escape the Final Fantasy VII brand. And that is one of the biggest reasons why this whole idea of wanting to get a remake formed. See, Final Fantasy VII was a great game. It had a great story, and a lot of people thought, you know what? They could just voice act it, and then just do some fancy cutscenes like they do for Kingdom Hearts. A lot of people thought if they could just put all those things together, bam! Instant Final Fantasy VII Remake, overshadows the other one completely. Never have to play as Popeye again, you play as this really nice man in the really nice 3D, right? That's what people wanted for a long time. A lot of people thought, if we got that, we'd be very happy. But unfortunately for those people, we did not get a remake of Final Fantasy VII, and we waited several years, but oh boy did we stick to it, and well, let's get to our next piece in the timeline. Look at this. At the PlayStation Experience, we got Final Fantasy VII teased. Oh my lord, what could it be? Oh, it was just a port of Final Fantasy VII on the PS4. Well, that's exciting. Again, another disappointment for the fan base at large, but hey, more Final Fantasy VII, and now you can play it on your PS4. People have an excuse to play it now. Little Timmy that may have gotten PS4 as their first console, he can now have access to Final Fantasy VII and all of its Popeye glory. Right? That's great. That's great. Really great. And I'm sure a lot of people probably just repurchased it because they like it too. I never did, though I have the PC version, so you know how it is. But let's fast forward to this E3 here.
Tonight, I am proud to announce that by popular demand, we have a very special treat for everyone.
For they are coming back. At last, the promise has been made.
Final Fantasy VII is being remade, and oh my lord. So this was the E3 when we got news about Final Fantasy VII. They gave us this wonderful trailer. They gave us this kind of bad news about it being split up into multiple games. But you know what? That didn't matter. We're getting the remake. We're getting it, right? We're getting it, right? Oh no, we had to wait a couple more years. But hey, we got news. I mean, we got news like this. Okay, it's being split into a couple parts. Oh, we got news like this. Oh, CyberConnect got booted from the game. Oh, we got news like this. They had to throw away all the material they did? We got news like this. Oh, Cloud got redone artistically 6 times? Is this game in development hell? To be honest, it probably was. But now, let's fast forward to 2019. Kingdom Hearts 3 has come out. It's very successful, and that game that was in its own little development hell finally is done. Final Fantasy 15's over with, done. DLC canceled. Oh man, I don't feel good about that one. But 15's out of the window too. Let's go to 2019, and whoa, there we are. We're getting brand new trailers. We're getting brand new stuff, and now let's take a look here. E3 2019. See, the fact of the matter is Final Fantasy VII at this point has reached a 22-year life cycle. And within its 22-year life cycle, it has always found itself in the public eye, and even to this day, people are hyped for it. Even getting the bad news, it was good for people to hear, because they knew that Final Fantasy VII was a thing, and it was coming. And now, we finally have a trailer where a character is announced that, you know, we knew she was going to be in the game. I mean, it's Tifa, she's one of the main characters. But even that blows people's minds, because this is where we are. Final Fantasy VII, it's almost like a brand of its own at this point. You could almost take it apart from Final Fantasy and make it its own thing. Like, Final Fantasy VII is this thing that pervades gaming culture. You're always going to hear about it. This is not the first time you've heard about, you know, anybody talk about Final Fantasy, I'm sure. And the fact of the matter is, at this point in its life cycle, Final Fantasy VII has really, truly reached a status that it's an icon. It's as, like, Cloud and his Buster Sword are as famous as Mario at this point. And that is why I think Final Fantasy VII is such a big deal. Well, anyway, guys, that's my opinion on why Final Fantasy VII is a big deal. This is definitely a first for me, making a video like this. Kind of an in-between between like a discussion video and a video essay. But, you know, I hope it wasn't too bad. And of course, you can let me know about that right down in the comments below. So, you know what? Give me some feedback. Like it if you like it, dislike it if you don't. And hey man, I don't know if you notice here, but I'm kind of a small channel here. So feel free to share me if you really want to see more content. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I am looking forward to making more videos like this in the future about other things. But yeah, look forward to that. If you want to see any RPG-based content, all you gotta do is subscribe to me and you'll hear a little bit more. Anyway guys, it's Weekly from Weekly Disaster Games, and I'm signing out.